Greenland is a special place because most of it is covered by ice. And ice is one of the most fascinating materials on Earth. It has a lighter density than water, which is why we see the icebergs floating. And it's why we have life on Earth. But if we melt the full Greenland ice sheet, it would raise the global sea levels by 7 meters. So Greenland will be the greatest source for sea level rise in the coming decades.
Keel is down! Keel down! Okay, bow is free!
It's also a place where 6 women are about to sail to, all from different walks of life, but all connected by their drive and passion for the natural world.
So here we are. The distance
to Greenland
is 650 miles.
I'm Joan Mulloy and I'm a professional solo sailor.
And I'm also a mum to an almost 1-year-old and I'm 4.5 months pregnant.
I'm ready to go!
It's pretty exciting, but there's a butterfly of nerves too.
I'm Felicity Aston, polar explorer and climate scientist.
In 2012, I became the first woman to ski across the Antarctic landmass on my own.
My name is Madeleine Sinclair Baker and I'm a tropical marine biologist and wildlife filmmaker.
How are you feeling?
Excited! I'm Suresh Mann and I work in sustainable finance for BNP Paribas.
I'm Emma Wolstenholme. I'm ex-military. I only left 2 years ago. So I used to be in the Air Force and was the last woman out of Camp Bastion in Afghanistan.
And I'm Sophia Scott. I make documentary films and I also have a startup making high-performance expedition kit and bags from recycled plastic. Our mission is to make a film about climate change, tracking the personal stories of the crew members on board and looking at Greenland really through their eyes.
We're finally heading over that horizon, which is majorly exciting. And there's just this sense of anticipation, slight anxiety, but overall just freedom. That's, the core of our DNA as human beings. And what we're going to find over that horizon is really exciting because we don't know, and that's what exploring is all about.
We're just getting ready to put sails up. We have just motored out of the bay in Reykjavik and we've gone a bit further north than we need to get a good angle for when we put the sails up.
I'm having a real reality check. You're looking at the waves and you're realising that this boat is it. There's no going back.
Essentially, our team is not a team of sailors, so just a bit of a kind of test of endurance to endure, make sure we get to Greenland in one piece.
Good morning. This is Prince Christiansson that we'll be sailing through, and you can see that there's a few glaciers. This is a big glacier. I went on an expedition down this fjord 25 years ago, so that could be quite interesting.
So we've had a bit of an update on the weather just now, and the wind is going to shift later and increase a bit, and it's kind of wind we would rather not be sailing in.
We're on these waves. So they started out like they were dancing and the seagulls were dancing with them, and now quite turbulent, majestic at the same time. Double-edged sword.
Basically the plan is to just try and get through this strong wind into the lighter wind by the coast.
In the North Atlantic, a severe weather warning has been issued from Cape Farewell across the Denmark Straits, northeasterly, veering easterly, becoming a cyclone.
It's literally like being on a roller coaster. My stomach is like, can you hear that? It's a mental one.
Unfortunately, last night, for some reason, the sickness took hold of me.
and I'm finding it very difficult to do any kind of filming. Don't really got my camera.
This is really agitated, you know, there's no pattern. There are waves on top of waves, on top of waves, and the boat is hitting it. It's all different angles.
Matt hadn't been outside since we left the shore.
Like 3 days ago.
Finally outside. You can feel the breeze.
Glad you're feeling better.
We can see land. We can see Greenland. I never imagined it to be quite so mountainous.
And the mountains just go on and on and on and on. They look like clouds, but they're not, they're mountains. This is a massive place. The biggest island in the world.
Wow.
Greenland is special because most of Greenland is covered by a really big ice sheet. Actually, it's the second largest ice sheet in the world. And when you look at the warming we have globally, we see that the warming in the Arctic is by far the most pronounced.
Not many people have seen what we're seeing, so that's pretty cool.
We've just seen an iceberg.
Yeah, first iceberg.
I've just arrived here, and within like half an hour there were like 6 icebergs all around us, and we're not talking about small icebergs either. They are the size of shopping malls. They are huge.
Icebergs aren't so scary, they're a little bit spicy, a bit more worrying. That's good. They're really beautiful, but be very careful sailing amongst them. Now we've just got the radar up pretty much full time and trying to watch out the front of the boat as much as we can. If there was any ice, it's best to put it nose on because the front is very well protected against impact, whereas the sides not so much. If we do see something, we just need to steer straight for it. Wow.
We've been navigating at between 1 and 2 knots so that we can avoid so much ice. Some have been quite big, some have been really tiny. You never know, it might be bigger than it seems.
We are in the Prince Christian Sound Fjord, and we're in a little anchorage tucked off in a little bay. To be in here at a safe harbour or safe anchorage, it's amazing.
What time is it actually? I have no idea. It's dawn. That's about. Because not only have I lost track of day, time, year, week, but at some point we crossed into Greenland time. No one's sure exactly when officially we did that. Look at this. 5 to 10 years ago, this wouldn't have been navigable. Boats that were trying to use these passages had to wait for hours, try and slide through the ice, and sometimes they couldn't get through at all. And yet, look now. And it's a really quite dramatic demonstration of just how quick and how fundamentally the environment is changing. And this kind of changes are happening all around the world. It's more visible here in the Arctic, and it's happening 3 times faster, according to the IPCC, than anywhere else. So this is why the Arctic region is such a interesting case study, if you like. We can learn from what's happening here and apply that to try and predict and prepare for what is going to happen in other regions of the world.
Isn't that the most amazing iceberg you've ever seen?
That is the most incredible thing.
I'm mad to think that we're so few people have probably sailed up here and seen it. There's no charts. Hardly any people see it, but it's really affected by what people are doing elsewhere.
Just for me as a person, but also for me as a mother, to think that, we're going to leave, my son and my unborn child with this massive problem that we have not done anything about. I don't want to leave them a problem as a legacy. I would prefer to, at least for them to be like, okay, well, your generation did everything you could, and now we can.
I swam past an iceberg!
Wow! Well done!
It was freezing! Ready? Hi! Johnson in Greenland! On Monkeyland!
It all feels a bit random, doesn't it? It's method to the madness.
So finally, we've got to our first location for collecting some data. So we're going to go and do some trawls and see what we find.
Wow. Who said science had to be boring?
So I'm trying to find a spot where the glacier is calving down, and so we can get a better idea of the routes and cycle pathways of this non-organic pollution. Right, I'm just going to record where we are. What we're doing here is collecting data just from the surface layer. What I would look for in this is specifically microplastics.
Plastic carrier bag, but they just disintegrate, and then that ends up in a fish, you know? I didn't expect to find quite so much, to be honest. But once you start looking, you can't stop finding bits.
It's shocking, isn't it, when we're so remote, so far away from sort of civilization. It's shocking.
It just makes me feel bad for being human, because this is our fault.
I mean, plastic pollution is everywhere. Everywhere I go, and I've travelled a lot, there's always plastic in the sea, on land. So at Ground Truth, we're all about material innovation. So we went on a very long journey to try and innovate some new materials from recycled plastic, but now we're incorporating sequestered CO2 into our materials and also into the components.
Two of the most important greenhouse gases, that's CO2, carbon, and then methane. And methane is also a very strong greenhouse gas, but it has a lifetime in the atmosphere of 10 years. But the carbon dioxide has a lifetime in the atmosphere of more than 100 years.
Oh, can you hear the popping now? This one, look. Loads of air bubbles in there. It's really odd to think that, you know, you could suck this piece of ice and actually be sampling the atmosphere from eons ago.
Every year you have a layer of snow falling on the ice, and next year a new layer, and gradually it's compressed into trapped air bubbles. So when we drill our ice cores from the top to the bottom, we cover the climate for the last 250,000 years in Greenland. And it's very, very clear that the concentrations we've had are unmatched.
We're in Tasmere Fjord, and I was here almost exactly 25 years ago. In case you can't tell, that's me on the end there, look.
Wow.
And I've actually found some pictures of the same fjord that stretches back even further. In 1894, look at that. So, you know, the head of the fjord is almost completely cut off by this glacier coming in from the right. And you know, there's no trace of that now, just the geological footprint of it.
That's very powerful, hey? Very powerful.
Well, I mean, again, I think it's important to say that the receding of glaciers is a natural process. What isn't natural is the speed at which it's happening.
As an explorer that, you know, frequently goes out on this ice, will this always be something that's viable to do?
No, not at all. So skiing to the North Pole, for example, the last time someone was able to ski from the coast to the North Pole was in 2014. And that's likely never going to be possible again because the integrity of the ice is, you know, the risk is too high.
In 50 years, we've gone from the first person to stand at the North Pole to the last person.
Weirdly warm today, isn't it?
It is really warm. I think they were saying it's the hottest year on record, right? In terms of summer, which is depressing because every year it feels like that's what comes out as a statistic. And then more generally, I think if you look at increased temperatures and what it means, I think there's a huge challenge of adaptation. You've got parts of the world that are uninhabitable, and you think about the people that live there, well, the result of that's going to be a lot of climate refugees as well. I think a lot of people consider migrants and refugees as separate, but actually I think when you look at the climate crisis, it's going to create a lot of issues in terms of migration.
For the first time ever, rain has been recorded at the summit of the Greenland ice cap, roughly 2 miles above sea level. Temperatures at the Greenland summit are unusually well below freezing, and scientists say the mild weather is a sign of global warming. Ice melt on Sunday was 7 times higher than the daily average for this time of year.
We've just come in to some reception. Looking at the news, for the first time up on the ice sheet, they've had rain, which means it's well above freezing.
I think one of the most, iconic changes was standing in our camp on the Greenland ice sheet, and it was raining. We saw a rainbow, and wow, a rainbow! We've never seen a rainbow there before. So this is, strong evidence that the climate is warming.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And we're currently quite high above the glacier looking down. It really goes to show the absolute scale of the thing.
So it's 1.5 kilometres wide, and the sheer face, the drop, is about 70 to 80 metres tall. It's just immense. It's amazing.
So it's 20 years you've been working?
Yes.
Coming here in the summers?
Yeah.
And have you noticed a really big difference in the 20 years?
We're missing the real winters.
Real winter?
Yeah. I've been, for about 10 years ago, I was driving across the fjord in May, actually.
And so the fjord just doesn't freeze over to the same level?
Only for shorter terms.
It's going to be a weird day when there's no ice here.
Can't imagine.
Yeah.
I can't imagine Greenland without ice.
Yeah. It's not going to be long.
Wow.
I think it's quite sad. You obviously care about climate change for years, and my whole life I've worked towards doing stuff on it. And then when you see it like that, you just think, you've seen it on the television before, and you've seen scientists go on a little boat where it's crashing away, but to see it for real yourself is quite sad.
The real sadness in coming back here is that I'm not surprised to see these changes. I wouldn't expect anything else, but to see loads less ice, a lot more evidence of human civilization. Man's footprint is a lot heavier here now than it was 25 years ago. So it makes me feel a bit nostalgic, and But the big shock is that I'm not surprised. You know, this is what we know is happening all around the world. These glaciers are holding back an entire ice sheet. And if that ice sheet is unstable and collapses, the resulting sea level rise, not to mention a huge mass of fresh water, what impact that will have on ocean currents. And then ocean and atmosphere are so minutely paralleled that will then have a knock-on effect on atmospheric circulation, on our weather, on extreme weather events, on seasons, on harvests, on what you can grow. And you can just see that it snowballs into something that is planet changing, civilization changing.
You know, a lot of the impacts that are felt here by the local communities in the Arctic are, they start the sources somewhere else. You know, how does that make people feel?
Right now we're finding it's a very difficult time for Inuit and other indigenous peoples in the Arctic, especially because the impacts of climate change are very pronounced for rural communities.
From your experience, what do you think people should be doing?
Communities really do want to be involved in the decision-making process because we find that often practices and sort of management strategies that come from a place of Inuit knowledge or indigenous knowledge are actually really healthy for the environment. And these really haven't received enough attention sort of from the international community. So there is a time right now where we're trying to figure out how to connect the international conservation targets and goals, these big climate change goals, to local communities and ensure that there's enough feedback between the two of them.
And with the warming that's going to come during the next, tens and 20s and hundreds of years, boom, it's going to take off. So we expect Greenland to be the greatest source for sea level rise in the coming decades. So if we really want to reach the Paris goals of not warming the atmosphere more than 1.5 degrees, we actually need to capture CO2 and take it down from the atmosphere again, because it's there and it will continue to be there. And we need everyone in the world to do it, both the poor nations and the rich nations.
Human beings are capable of huge innovation, of huge courage. And so I feel really optimistic that we can find ways, really clever ways, to improve our relationship with our planet and make this a future where this kind of situation won't happen again.
The only thing really we all need to be doing now is looking at how we can collaborate and learn from each other. It's all hands on deck for the future.